Hi, humans of the world. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Project Heal's fourth installment of National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. So excited to be here with all of you. Hi, everyone that's saying hi. I love you all so much. Oh my God, this is so exciting. So I am so excited. I'm here today to talk with one of our special guests. I can't wait till they get here to talk about gender beyond the binary. One of the loves of my life to talk about, so I can't wait. So just a reminder, Project Heal, we're here to kind of break down all the systemic barriers in eating disorder treatment. So tonight, when you donate, you're going to be donating for our LGBTQ Treatment Equity Project. And that project basically goes towards queer healing. So anyone that identifies as LGBTQ, the money goes to them. So please, please, please donate. I am so excited. Our guest is here. I am so proud to announce that we will be speaking with Misha Osherovich today. They're a non-binary actor, filmmaker, and mental health LGBTQ advocate. Misha can recently be seen starring in the new Blumhouse film Freaky, which if y'all haven't seen Misha's new movie, go. So good. Hello.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you all things?
I can see you. You look fabulous. I can hear you. You sound fabulous. Welcome, welcome.
Because I'm so quick out of the shower, it's not even funny. So I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I was just telling everyone that you were just in the movie Freaky, which, I could talk for days, but that's not why we're here. But that you actually wrote and produced and starred in an award-winning short film, Wednesdae, which tackles mental health and body image within the queer community. So thank you, because art that talks about us is so important. So we're so excited for you to be here.
Yeah, I'm so pumped to be here. I mean, you and I have already chatted. I'm such a fan of Project Heal. I love y'all's messaging. I'm just glad that I can provide a little voice to all the queer goodness about mental health.
Agreed. So, I mean, what's it like for you being a queer human in the spotlight and managing recovery? I feel like that is such an intersection of things to manage.
It really is, and I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. I mean, look, I'm in the entertainment industry, and part of the entertainment industry is constantly, unfortunately, upholding really unrealistic body goals, really unrealistic, photoshopped and filtered ideations of what bodies should look like. And it's funny because queer bodies in general we've always been around, but we're getting finally a really good amount of representation in the media, and it's only getting better. But unfortunately, we are all still susceptible to similar toxic body culture or body shaming culture. So honestly, literally the film Everyday, the short film that I made, I titled it Everyday because I take a very specific stance on recovery, and that is that I'm not recovered. I will never be recovered.
Yes.
Right. And like for me,
it's not like this, right? It's not this magic wand. Like I'm a therapist and I go, oh, there you go, Misha. Done, honey.
No,
no.
I freaking wish. I say every day because I choose recovery every day, and I choose to honor my body and my mental health and my physical health every day. But that's especially important in the entertainment industry where, to be very frank and very real, I struggle. I have relapsed because of entertainment industry pressures. So yeah, I take it very, very much one day at a time.
Oh, well, I love hearing that. I know I told you before, I have clients watching. And so I hope those of you that are working on recovery here, everybody, Misha included, we are working on this every day.
We are.
Which leads me to, you do a lot of advocacy work in your work, right? You use your art form to kind of express the importance of that. Why is it important for you in particular?
For me in particular, advocacy, first of all, look, I'm an artist, I'm an entertainer, I am a writer, I'm an actor. These are things that I put my messages out into the world that way. If I was a lawyer, I'd be doing this through legislation. If I was if I was a mental health professional, I'd be doing it through like on the ground mental health work. But I'm an artist, and I believe that art has a real power to create vocabulary. We're seeing this. We're seeing this with things like Euphoria and with even the new show on HBO, Generation. We're seeing young people talking about mental health, and it's one of those things where the more vocabulary about mental health and queerness that's put out into the universe, especially with young people, the more we can kind of mitigate the not knowing and the shame of especially eating disorders and body image, especially within the queer community. So
I mean, it's kind of like we talked about before, right? Like when we were kids, and I know I'm a little older than you, right? When we were kids, there were like no words for us.
No. No, 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 absolutely not. And like I grew up in a very conservative household. My parents are like from Russia, and I got everything that came with that. So
Yep.
gay was not a word that was allowed to be said in the
Yep.
household. Queer was not even something that I knew about. Being outside of the gender binary was absolutely not something that I was cognizant of.
Yep.
So I grew up thinking that every part of me was wrong, and that unfortunately the only way to take control over it was for me an eating disorder.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Which is so often the story we hear in the queer community, especially with anyone that's trans or gender nonconforming, right? Is I couldn't be in control of my body. The world didn't let me know that I was valid. So I know. I figured it
Yeah.
out.
So I'm going to take control in my own way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's why we're here, is to hopefully
Yeah.
make it so that that next generation we're talking about maybe doesn't have to feel that way anymore.
Exactly.
So I love that you're talking about art. I know we've talked about it. I'm an art therapist, and I love the
Yeah.
idea that art and advocacy together kind of can create healing. And so how does your art support your recovery?
Sure. So besides the very kind of direct way which you just brought up about like I create art about mental health, but
Yeah.
for me it's actually been it's not just art and recovery, it's art, gender identity and recovery, and I've lately been nothing but grateful that Hollywood is in this moment where gender identity, sexuality, anything in the queer spectrum has become so important for the for people in Hollywood to start representing. Could we do better? Absolutely. But we're getting there. And for me, my recovery is constantly in conversation with my life. When I came out as non-binary, and that was relatively recently, and it was already in the public eye. I had already been in a film. And it was one of those things where it was healing for me. Like I think I told you this story maybe, but like I was like walking around my apartment, I was alone. And when it happened, I just kind of came to the realization, the words non-binary and the pronouns they, them kind of came to me. And a physical weight was lifted off my fucking shoulders. If I
You're
can
making
curse, I
me
hope so.
teary-eyed. Oh,
Stop!
yes.
But I mean it. It was I had never experienced something like that before, where be relieving myself of the pressure of being and restricting inside the binary. I My eating disorder voice got quieter. The desire to hide my body even when nobody was looking, which is a
Yep.
real recovery thing that I struggle with, disappeared for a few hours. I danced around my apartment virtually naked, and that's not something that I freaking do. It's not something that I do, but
No.
it happened because my gender identity was being confirmed,
Yep.
and now when it comes to acting, I'm getting auditions for non-binary roles. I literally got one in my email this morning that my manager and I are so excited about, because
Congratulations.
thank you, because I'm seeing me on a page, and I'm seeing people
Yes.
that I know in the queer community on a page.
Yes.
And I hope that my recovery and my art and my gender identity continue to be in this kind of conversation where they support each other and lift each other up. Because for a while I was a very clamped down human.
Agreed.
But
And it's so of course I get teary-eyed whenever anybody shares kind of what that experience was like, because I've gone through that too, and decently recently myself, where it was one of those, you can keep pretending or you can use the word.
mhm.
And it was like you were saying, right? I used the word, and then I was like, oh, you know what? I really like ice cream again.
Yeah. Isn't that it? It's those little things. It's for me, I mean, recovery at the end of the day is all about little things for me,
Of
but
course.
whether it's being able to eat a food that was
Mhm.
previously a fear food, for me again, it's covering up my body when there's no
Yes.
reason to. Those little freedoms that are unlocked when gender identity becomes kind of in harmony with the rest of where you're
Yes.
at. I did not realize until my adult life how important that was for my recovery, but now it's almost it's a touchstone of it for me.
Right. It was almost like in art therapy, I talk with clients about, like, because art is kind of the unspoken when it's studio art,
Mhm.
it's the key to a lock that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Very that, very that.
So, I mean, talking about eating disorders, kind of what is your eating disorder story, of course, that you're comfortable sharing with us, including like your own treatment experience?
Sure. So without getting too much into it, I
Of
think
course.
many people with eating disorders, especially eating disorders that have lasted many years, can identify with this. I've had the spectrum. I started with, I was very much on the anorexia side of things. I through treatment and through kind of rebelling against my treatment, I developed a very severe case of bulimia and binge eating disorder. And I had the gamut. And unfortunately for me, treatment was from start to finish, whether it was medical intervention, which I badly needed. I was not physically healthy, but whether it was medical intervention or later inpatient programs throughout the US, I really struggled with my queer identity and my healing from my eating disorder not being at the top of the list for the people that were taking care of me. Instead, it was getting me under control. Eat this many calories, and you're not allowed to exercise. And of course, I know that there's everybody's eating disorder treatment is different, and everybody's journey is different. For me, I was being told every step of the way that I was wrong. What I was doing was wrong. My thoughts were wrong. My queerness was wrong, and everything needed to be fixed. That's a larger conversation, and it really is unfortunate that I experienced that level of like somebody trying to clamp down and not allowing me to be me. But I will say what I learned through my, because all of this was happening from like 15 to 18, 19 for me. Like really it hit me hard and it hit me early, which unfortunately for a lot of kids it does. And I realized through, quite frankly, almost losing my life, it happened and it was a really scary moment, physical health wise, how much I wanted to live life, and B, that I didn't want anybody, especially a queer person, to go through what I went through, feeling that every single part of me was wrong, and therefore that I had to change, control, or unfortunately at times I even thought of ending myself because I couldn't be right. And now I feel more right than I've ever felt in my life, and that's because I'm embracing recovery, but it's taken a second.
So again, I feel like all I'm going to do tonight is cry and regret that I put on any makeup.
No, it's so pretty too.
Like in such a good way. Like when you're a therapist, you don't talk about your story with people. So like, this is such a unique thing for me to sit with someone who, I can remember being in a therapist's office and being told, just don't talk about it with your parents. It'll be easier.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Or you're in a bigger body, so it's fine if you keep dieting. It doesn't matter if you don't feel well, right? And then like you're saying, it got to the point where people were like, they keep trying to hurt themselves. What is going on? What can we do? And the reality is, if that first person had just said to either one of us, so glad you're here. They, them, great. You are valid just like that.
Meeting you where you are.
Yes.
And that you're getting to kind of the crux of what I believe about mental health, especially when it comes to queer mental health and when it comes to queer mental health for teenagers. Nobody met me where I was. Nobody met me where I was. I hope that's grammatically correct. Nobody bothered to take the time to look at me and validate my identity as a queer person, as a person struggling with body image, as a person whose gender and gender dysphoria was all over the place. Yep. And for that, I'm very sad, but that's my mission. That's what I want to do. I want to create a really easily accessible vocabulary so that girls, boys, everybody in between and outside of those identities, when they are growing up from ages much younger than 15, are able to say, Mom, Dad, I don't like what I see in the mirror today. Or Mom, Dad, I'm sad today. Mom, Dad, I don't like the clothes that I'm wearing. I want to change that. If we create simple, accessible vocabulary, especially for teens that are growing up and especially for queer teens that are growing up, I really do believe, again, we can mitigate a lot of the mental health kind of disasters and treatment disasters and recovery, unfortunately, disasters that happen with people dealing with body image issues and eating disorders. It's all about vocabulary, and it's early. It has to be early and simple and easy.
Agreed, 100%. And it's so interesting, right? Because as artists, all we use is words and images. We understand how this fits into the grander scheme of things. I always get frustrated. I'm always like, can treatment providers just come to the artists? We will show you the language. You use it. Yeah.
It's intersectional. It all kind of builds on itself. And that's the other thing that bothers me. And this is a very personal opinion, but like well, I think that the way that treatment is so obviously science-based, but it's very one size fits all at the moment.
Yes.
I think that's really dangerous. I think it's especially dangerous for people that fall out of what society is currently calling the traditional norms of gender and sexuality. Yes. It's, again, inherently invalidating us before we even set foot into a treatment facility or right on our first day. And from there, I feel like the only place to go is down, which is really scary. And I don't hope for that or wish that upon anybody. But I think inclusive treatment and recovery that doesn't put labels on anybody, doesn't put labels on things, on people, on gender, but just again meets people where they are
Mhm.
and says, hey, I see you. I see your pronouns. I see your gender. I see your sexuality. I see your identity. That's all amazing. Those are the good parts of you. You are dealing with something that's incredibly insidious. And I know that for a long time, it's felt like your best friend. It's felt like the way that you felt like you could get through the world and control your body and control your life. And that sucks. And I know that. And I feel that as a person whose my eating disorder has been my best friend for God knows how many years. But
Yep.
we are going to find a way to help you divorce from that best friend in a way that still preserves your identity. So that's,
Thank you. No, thank you. Not just like as two people who identify similarly, but as a therapist, thank you. Because this is my struggle in my job every day. Because I do outpatient work, so I don't work in facilities anymore. And I have
right.
so many teens in particular that their parents call and they go, so we heard you have someone who identifies as non-binary. We can't find anyone that our kid can model. Can they model for my kid as part of therapy? And that's such a heavy thing to think about. In my state, I'm it.
Yeah.
All the treatment facilities, all the everything, where are we modeling for kids? And that's why you are so important.
Well, thank you. I hope that you and I think you and I are on the same page about this. I hope that the way that we model is by being imperfect. It's,
Yes.
I mean it when I say I struggle. I have relapsed even recently, but that's why the everyday motto is so important to me because the next day is a reset, not completely
Yes.
wiping the slate. I carry my trauma and my hopes and my dreams with me every single day.
Of course.
But if we can move through the world and model what actively engaging with recovery looks like every single day and kind of aggressively loving ourselves, even when we might not like what we see in the mirror, might not have had a great food day, whatever your personal struggles are, that's recovery. Anything else is, I think, a bit of a fallacy.
100%. And I think that's kind of what we have sold as kind of the heteronormative, heterogeneous recovery is, well, today was a mistake, so that's it, back to treatment, instead of
Yeah.
today was hard. The world is hard to be in. I mean, not to get super political for Project Heal, although I know Rebecca supports me, but the last 4 years weren't exactly easy if you were queer or
Nope.
BIPOC or disabled or anything other than one type of person. And what, you were supposed to wake up every day for the last 4 years, want to eat all your meals, not abuse exercise, not do all those things and like yourself?
No. I certainly struggled with it. Oh God. And
Same.
the bitch of it all, and I really hope I'm allowed to curse here, but
You're so good.
right. The really hard part here is we're in quarantine. It's a pandemic. We have been left alone with our thoughts. And I know for me, I'm gonna get really honest here. Some of my worst, whether it's like internal with my thoughts or actionable eating disorder symptoms, some of my worst moments of relapse or worst moments of struggle have been as a result of sitting at home without my normal coping skills, without
Yes.
my normal coping folks, and having to deal with the eating disorder thoughts kind of eating away at me. It's really hard. And I've developed a litany of new coping skills because we are in these tiny bubbles. And
Mhm.
it's one of those things where I'm really proud of myself for having been able to kind of adjust what recovery looks like in a pandemic, but it's exhausting. It's fucking exhausting.
I
It's
know,
like,
right? I mean, I'm glad
but
we're here together, but I'm sure both of us were a little like, but nap time?
yeah, oh God, yes, yes.
And not because we don't love what we do or because we don't want to be here, but you know, I have found that like part of being queer is that there's this whole chosen family that is vital in recovery, that unless they are in your little pandemic bubble, which most of us cannot be that way, we are so cut off from our resources.
We are, and I will say that like I love the whole chosen family ideology, and that's been really real for me. But even moving from New York to LA, like it's been because I just moved to LA. I moved to LA right as the pandemic started, and
Oh,
with I know with New York is where I kind of was born and bred as a queer person. I knew what gay male Misha kind of was, maybe
mm-hmm.
before I got to New York, but I found my queer family. I found my queer mentors. I found my queer teachers that taught me that it was, okay to be the femme sort of big ass question mark that I love and that speaks to my soul. So not being able to be around those people that affirms not only my gender identity, but my recovery, that's been really hard. And I think a lot of people have been feeling that during the pandemic.
So then I'm wondering, probably for both of us, not just for you, right? How do we move past day to day at this point? And is that even possible or reasonable to put out there to people?
That's a really hard question. And I mean, I want to say that it comes with that lovely thing called age and time, I hope, because every day becomes many days, becomes months. And if you look back at just the ratio of your life, you start to see a trend of more days embracing recovery than not. I will say that something I've been thinking about a lot over the pandemic is and this sounds super hippy dippy, but roll with me.
No, I'm for it.
I love life. And that's not something that I was able to say when I was in the throes of my eating disorder. I was obeying the eating disorder, I was leaning on it, and I was living inside of it. I've since, through my queer family in New York, through my friends out here in LA, through, being able to embrace recovery a bit more, I've been able to love life and the adventure of life and move outside of myself in my own tiny little head and experience and want to kind of chew on, if you will, all that life has to offer. And when I'm feeling really in the pits of maybe a relapse or a really tough day or an audition that made me really self-conscious about my body, I kind of circle back to what I want my life to look like when I'm 80, 90, maybe 100 years old. And I want it to look like not just that I chose recovery more days than not, but that I really experienced all life has to offer. And I know for me personally, my eating disorder did nothing but limit my life, who I could see, what I could eat, when I was exercising, low power modes. We're using all the power. I want to experience life. And my eating disorder did nothing but limit my life. So that's what I turn to when I think long term with recovery.
That's so beautiful. I love the idea of I tell everyone I can't wait till I'm 90. I can be one of those super old queer people you see in all of the history books where we're, reading stuff now, and we can be those people and there can be messages about this.
Yeah, yes. I'm so excited that we are who we are when it comes to being maybe a bit at the forefront of Queer body reclamation, not even acceptance, but reclaiming what a queer body can or cannot look like. They can look like anything. But I'm also really excited to be 80 freaking years old. And like you said,
yes.
looking at the generation and generations below us, celebrating what we are hopefully building now, which is a much stronger and more holistic awareness of how queer people exist in the world, especially when it comes to mental health.
100%. I feel and I know we know this, and I could give people all the nerdy clinical statistics all the time, but we know that just by being queer, we are at such higher risk for eating disorder and mental health issues. And yet we have to make our own life for our voices to be centered.
Yes, we do. That there's part of that really saddens me, right? Being queer, I say is being in the other, right? Being queer is by nature being in the other. And I personally think that we should celebrate being in the other. And that's one of the amazing parts about being queer. It's a superpower. I literally call it the queer superpower because we are celebrating being in the other. But you're absolutely right. It also puts us at a lot of risk. And the access to treatment, the vocabulary inside treatment, it's like what we've been saying. It's not that the infrastructure isn't currently built in for us to feel at home in treatment environments. So I'm hoping that's another one of those things that changes and that people are able to voice more clearly inside recovery and treatment sphere what their needs are and what their identity is and how those two intersect.
100%. And in my work experience, I found that the few places that do a really good job of centering our voices are also not fiscally accessible for the average queer person.
Yeah.
And then it's well, then what are we doing? Is it just a voice to have a voice?
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's here, right? You can put the rainbow at the bottom of your website.
Well, yeah, exactly. You put the rainbow at the bottom of your website, but how many queer people can actually access that healthcare and mental health care that they need? Yeah.
No. Which is why, again, so happy that you're here doing this with us, because this is what we want to do at Project Heal, right? We want to
provide those opportunities.
Yes. And like and Rebecca knows this, my big dream is that someday Project Heal will be at the forefront of queer healing. That this will just be the thing that we have made accessible and possible in this field.
I have that dream too. I manifest that dream for you.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Well, it's one of those things, right? Like I'm an artist. I do art things. I make art. And I hope that the message that gets out there when it comes to mental health, especially for queer people, that's as important as it is, but it's organizations like this, like Project Heal, that actually do on the ground boots work to find people and connect people with the mental health care access that they need. Because at the end of the day, if the healthcare isn't accessible, what's the healthcare for? So
exactly, just to say that it exists, which it's kind of like when people like queer people only because they exist and they can say that they have that fun friend.
If I hear that one more time, I have a friend that's queer.
Mm-hmm. That's like having a friend that's black.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, for all of our people watching, but especially people that are working on their recovery, like, what words of wisdom can you provide our, fellow queer people trying to kind of embrace themselves?
Words of wisdom. I'm going to check my battery before I say. Okay.
You go for it.
Thank you. Am I back? I'm back.
You're back.
Okay. So this is something that I'm still learning, right? But like I said, being queer is being in the other. And being in the other is something that I, as a queer person, am learning to celebrate. I think it's something that many queer people, when they really find kind of their full queer, unapologetic selves, they start to celebrate it. For kids growing up with that thing, that queerness, that otherness that you feel, it is scary and it is not fun. I know, especially when it first starts to bubble up, but it's a superpower. It's a superpower, and it's something that you should do nothing but foster and harness and make something that is embedded into who you are. And I know that that's very difficult, especially for folks that are growing up in conservative families or conservative environments, especially for folks that are dealing with eating disorders and body image issues that feel like they don't have the access to the healthcare that they need. And I promise you that people like you and I, we're working on that. We are. But don't mistake that feeling of otherness for being wrong. I did that, and I was really miserable for most of my teenage life. In fact, all of it, because I felt like I was wrong for being me. And that's not fair to anybody. It's certainly not fair to yourself. So that thing that you're feeling, that's a superpower. It's not a bad thing. And do nothing but embrace it, because it will take you farther in life than any amount of hiding. It just will.
100%. I always tell people that if you want to know what resilience looks like, meet a queer kid. Mm-hmm. Meet a queer adult that realized they were queer really young. We are strong because we've had to be.
Yeah.
But I think that strength can be harnessed, right, with again, the right treatment and the right access to make this recovery possible.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more.
Do you mind if we take a few questions before we run out of time?
Questions.
Okay. Go. If any of you have questions, send them, but I have two right here. This is new. Okay.
Wow. Technology.
Oh, people just want to say hello and that you're super fabulous and that they're big fans of yours. And
hi.
I know. People love you, which not surprising.
Thanks. Oh.
I mean, well, I can share, like, from my kids that I talked to today, they all were like, can I text you before you do this? Because I kind of bragged to my clients that I was doing this, because why wouldn't you? One of them, got to watch your movie, and they said, and it's going to make me tear-eyed, they said, I was in a movie. And I was like, yes, baby, you were in a movie. Yes, you were represented in a movie. That was you.
Oh, stop. I mean, that means the world, especially because it was two queer filmmakers that made this happen. Our director and our co-writer were literally two queer guys that wanted to see the gay kid in high school that they never got to be. So it was such an honor to play that role, and I'm so glad that it had that impact.
So we have a question from Addie Robbins. She says, nice to meet you. Love your work. I'm working on recovery also while pursuing a career in acting. Do you have any advice for recovering while working in this industry, especially when it's so image-based?
Yes, I do. And it kind of ties back into both the everyday recovery side of things and the your queerness is your superpower thing. And quite honestly, whether you're queer or not, it's more along the lines of this industry, you will feel so much pressure to change. You will feel so much pressure to be thinner or bigger or whatever people want from you. And it will, I promise you, not get you the result that you want to start focusing on that. And even if it's not an image thing, but it's a control thing, which I know for my eating disorder, especially, it was very much a control thing. This industry is thriving at the moment on authenticity. I have never done better acting than when I came out as non-binary and I started auditioning for non-binary roles because I'm being me. And I'm not trying to put on a straight, a mask, a bro, anything. And I think that embracing that authenticity is your best weapon in that case, both in fueling your recovery. And if the role is meant for you, and if you're meant to break into this industry with tenacity, you will, but you'll do it with authenticity. You're not going to, don't do it by trying to conform now more than ever in Hollywood. That's not the thing to do. And that is your superpower in that case, your authenticity. So hold on to that.
Oh my goodness. Artist to artist, that just feels that resonates so like deeply, like in my soul, to just bring your most authentic self to your art, because that's what people show up for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it can be messy, and it can be something that, is not finished on the edges or whatever you want to call it, but people respond more to authenticity than to anything else. Don't let anybody, especially not in Hollywood, tell you otherwise. People want to see real humans. So be a real human. Be you.
Great. Let's see. We have another question. What do you think are the impacts of gender limits and restrictions at treatment centers overall?
What do I think are the impacts of gender limits and restrictions? I will go back to my kind of harsh stance that I think it actually stunted my recovery. Being told that I was a boy, I was a man over and over again. Being told that my case was not usual, and that there wasn't the research or the statistics to validate my eating disorder, to validate my body image issues, because I was a man and I wasn't, quite frankly, a thin cis white girl. So I think the impact of invalidating somebody's gender identity, their LGBTQIA plus identity, I think it's really dangerous. And I can only hope and aggressively work towards a world where your gender identity, your queerness, your anywhere in betweenness is outright accepted, so that recovery can actually begin from, again, an authentic place.
100%. I can say working in the field, my first job working in the field, I had a supervisor tell me to keep my queerness to myself. It wasn't going to help my clients. And I'm sure that and everyone watching this knows, I know that I'm great at my job, blah, blah, blah. But what helps my clients when I show up like this? This is how I show up to work.
Mm-hmm,
this is me. This is how I talk with my partner in the next room, my cat's downstairs, my friends down the street. Like, what better way to heal than to just look at someone and be like, oh, they can be themselves. They have bad days. Like, my clients have seen me cry in the pandemic. Sorry, y'all. It's true. Like, your therapist gets depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember sitting with kids that, were us, right? Were you. And just thinking like, God, if I could just come out to them, I bet they wouldn't try the shit they're trying today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish, I don't even know, like, there's that reaction of like, oh, but mental health care is stiff or has policies or this and that. And of course we do. And that's all meant to maintain the safety and a trauma-free environment for the patient. That is a wildly important. But if I had you as a therapist, I don't know that I would have taken this long to embrace recovery. Red hot real talk.
Agreed. We're going to do one more question if you don't mind.
Okay.
Any advice for dealing with body image and eating disorder struggles that sometimes come with HRT-induced weight changes? I love being on T, but I'm worried about weight gain and relapse.
Sure, understood. That is obviously one of the most kind of cross-hairy, intricate, hard to navigate parts, especially if you're transitioning. And I cannot pretend like I know what it means to either medically or personally or emotionally or mentally transition. For me, my non-binary identity is embracing the question mark, and that's my side of things. But I'm not a medical professional, but if you have, and I hope you do, a very strong and very queer aware medical team guiding you through the more kind of nitty gritty sides of transitioning, just remember that bodies change, bodies change. My body has changed, and it's you getting hung up in the small ways that bodies change, and some of the big ways, especially when you're transitioning, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. I'm first of all, I'm so glad that you are able to be trans, or whatever the reason you're taking hormones are, and whatever the reason that you are, finding ways to appropriately and medically supervise change your body. I'm so glad that that's happening for you. And just, I would say, embrace the journey and be along for the ride. And if your soul is being fed by the fact that you are engaging with these, gender affirming behaviors and all that kind of stuff, roll with it because it sounds like you're on a journey that's going to be really gratifying, and some of the scarier parts are just kind of par for the course. That's a really general answer, and I wish I had more.
No.
But I try to speak from my experience,
which is all any of us can offer. And I can say, I don't take tea, but I am going through a half medical process myself with surgery. And it is hard when providers poke and prod at our bodies, when being naked is already hard, right? Yep. When now, on top of being invalidated by everything outside of us in the world, you sit in a medical office with someone. It's the pandemic, so we're alone. Our support people aren't with us, and our bodies are up for discussion. Yeah. When really the discussion isn't what anybody else has to say. It's, this is what I need from my body to be me. Mm-hmm, End of. There's not enough guidance for any of us that go through this process. So no. You have to find your people, right? Your therapist, your treatment team, who can guide you through it. Absolutely. And that's, I think, circling right back the frick around to mental health care and a mental health care team that understands and supports and validates your queerness. I know for me, again, going back to the whole dancing naked in the apartment when non-binariness became my roommate's home, became such a thing for me. It was one of those things where I looked in the mirror and my body hadn't changed from that morning to that evening, but I saw parts of my body that normally gave me an eating disorder, trauma response. I wish those parts weren't there. I wish those parts were smaller, bigger, whatever they are. And they all just kind of softened. The vision just kind of softened, and I was kind of proud to exist in this thing called my body. And that, I do think, is the power of affirming people's gender identity, their queerness, or whatever identity they kind of are on the inside, because that is something that is, again, it's a superpower. So embrace it, because I think it's a great healing tool. Oh, I agree. Well, thank you so much for joining us, for doing this with me, for giving us your time. If Thanks for having me. What I did before, you've made me love doing this even more. And I hope everybody watching, I hope everyone we both come across understands how important queer healing is and queer history is, and that it just gets better for both of us and for everybody else. Much agreed. The tide is rolling in the right place, I think, or towards the right place, whatever, you know what I mean. I do. But no, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. This means the world. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. We were so happy to have you. If you didn't donate tonight and you can donate later, don't forget our LGBTQ Equity Fund is always taking donations. Help queer people like us. Holy Jesus, I gotta say it. So I don't know what just happened, but we just raised $1,165, Misha. Yay! So I don't know who out there has money and loves us, but thank you. That was so generous. And I'm going to get teary-eyed again, but you are helping kids just like us become the cool adults that you are watching. Because we are killer. Thank you. You called me cool. I love it. You are? You're very cool. You're very cool as well. That's incredible. Yay. More money towards queer mental health. Do it. Yes. All right. I will let you go. We'll go have fun in our lives. But thank you, everybody, again. Thank you for the donations. Don't forget to check out Project Heal. Bye, y'all.